And we continue with Resigned from Creating the Self in the book The Loss That Is Forever. For some, the task of creating the self is taken on with a sigh of resignation. These survivors of early loss feel neither excitement nor defiance. Instead, just like good soldiers who must do a job that no one else much relishes, they act out of necessity. The child is presented with a situation that calls for action. There is no choice. One either creates the self or lives in a world of chaos. Rock star Madonna, the quintessential image maker of the 1980s, felt just such resignation at the death of her mother. When asked to describe the impetus for her competitiveness, Madonna attributes some of it to the death of her mother when she was only 6. After I got over my heartache, I said, I'm going to be really strong, and if I can't have a mother to take care of me, then I'm going to take care of myself. Her mother's early death also taught her that life was short, and that one could not and should not wait for the things that one really wants. Necessity caused Madonna to have to create herself. There was no mother to guide her and to nurture her choices. She alone was left with the responsibility of inventing and reinventing the woman she would become. While necessity began the process, Madonna's own pleasure at creating her public image clearly continued to drive the process of creating the self. Another survivor, Jake, with less flair for the dramatic, talked about having a similar sense that he had no choice but to become his own person. When I was growing up, I could do a lot of things by myself perfectly well. I would often go out and play basketball, bounce and shoot for an hour by myself, or go out on the golf course and by myself. I could probably spend more time by myself and do things on my own more than most people my age could, and I enjoyed it. I still enjoy it. It may be that I developed the sense of myself because of necessity. In the absence of a father to mentor and guide him, this man learned how to take care of himself and nurture himself. Claire recalls feeling quite unprotected in the world when her father died. Her mother was a self-absorbed woman, concerned with what members of the community thought of her and her family. As a result, Claire recalls not receiving much attention from her mother once her father died. The experience of being on her own and being left to her own devices convinced Claire that she could endure a lot. She knew suffering, discomfort, and inconvenience firsthand, and she learned that she could cope with these by just putting my head down and forging ahead. Because she received little attention from her mother and was often left to fend for herself, Claire invented an interior world that became quite portable. A world in which she could invent herself and imagine possibilities for her own life. Desiring to gain attention from her friends and classmates, Claire invented an imaginary boyfriend, complete with a fatal illness. She told her friends about her doomed lover and remembers being not only pleased with the attention she received, but also intrigued that she could invent a world and then use that world to get what she needed from other people. After her father's death, Claire felt alone and frightened much of the time, yet she was resigned out of necessity to forge ahead. I do what I have to do. I summon all my courage and I attend to the task that I have to attend to, but with enormous energy expended. Sometimes I slink back until I build up my required head of steam, and then I go at it again, but I don't go out thinking I can do it all. Part of me thinks I can do it, but part of me thinks I can't. Another part of me thinks I'll be laughed at, I'll be rejected. I know that I'm highly skilled in my profession, yet I keep thinking that I'm going to be found out. That's how it plays itself out. I do what I have to do. I earn a good living. I'm inventive. I basically take care of myself. Claire, like many of those who create the self out of necessity, feels burdened by the task of having to be her own inventor. By all standards, she has succeeded quite well, but sometimes she wishes that the burden could be shared by another, a strong and available parent who might have been there to guide her on her way. This last part of this section is Don's story. When his father abandoned the family, Don became the man of the house out of necessity. His older brother was already an out-of-control teenager, and Don's mother felt overwhelmed by the prospect of raising her 3 sons. She turned to Don, the son most like her, as a logical choice to replace his father. Don says, "Virtually all of my father's responsibilities fell to me. I was paying the bills, orchestrating the shopping, trying to control my brother's acting out. When my brother would leave the house, my mother would send me to watch him, making sure that he did not get into any trouble." As a boy of 11, Don resolved to be a responsible man, a man of whom his mother could be proud. "I did what my mother asked because there was no one else." If Don's father had not died when Don was only 16, 5 years after he had already abandoned the family, Don's story would be about the trauma of abandonment, not about early death. But for Don, abandonment and death became permanently entwined and came to mean loss without the chance of reunion. Throughout his life, Don's motto has been, "A man takes care of himself." This is in part what he learned from his father's failed example. Don's father had been unable to take care of his family when he lived with them, when he abandoned them, and ultimately when he died. Don saw how important it was, not only to his mother, but to the family's very survival, to have a responsible man at the helm. In the wake of his father's abandonment, a man was born. Don says that the boy he left at the time